Hello and welcome back to All of the Street Fighters, where we've been gradually looking at almost all of the Street Fighter games. We're looking at Street Fighter Alpha 3 today, or as it's known in Japan, Street Fighter 03, which is, obviously from the name, it's the third Street Fighter Alpha game. But in terms of iterative sequels, so if you think of Alpha 2, Alpha 3, Street Fighter 2 Turbo, Super Street Fighter 2, you know, later additions in series. Street Fighter Alpha 3 is probably got the most changes. It's got a colossal amount of changes from Street Fighter Alpha 2, which kind of makes sense because, if you look at the order we've done these videos, which is the chronological order, we've had Street Fighter 3 games since Street Fighter Alpha 2 came out, and we've had Versus games come out since then. So a lot's happened since Alpha 2 was released. So there's just tons of changes. So excuse me if I ramble a bit because there's so much to talk about. So I'm just going to jump straight into it. Let's talk about characters because that's where we always start. So this has got all the characters from Street Fighter Alpha 2, which was already quite a large roster. But then in the original arcade release of Street Fighter Alpha 3, they added a bunch of new ones, as they always do. So they added Cammy, E Honda, Blanca and Vega from older Street Fighter games. We recognise them. And then 3 brand new characters. So we've got Cody, who's from Final Fight, similar to Guy and Birdie and Hugo. There's loads of Final Fight characters gradually get added to Street Fighter. So Cody is brand new in this. We've then got Karen, and this is Karen's first appearance in Street Fighter. So Karen's storyline is that she's Sakura's rival, and she actually first made an appearance in a manga. So and then was brought to Street Fighter. So it's not her first appearance in multimedia, but it's her first appearance in the Street Fighter games. And then we've got R Mika. The R stands for Rainbow. She's called Rainbow Mika. She's a wrestler from Japan. She idolizes Zangief. She's completely brilliant. She's so fun to play. She recently made an appearance in Street Fighter 5. She's great. We'll look at her later on. Oh, it gets complicated after this. So there's a ton of console ports of Street Fighter Alpha 3, and not even console ports. They re-released it in arcades with more characters and stuff. So it gets a little bit complicated. But we'll start by talking about the PlayStation version, which was the first port. So the PlayStation version included Balrog, who's one of the boss characters in Street Fighter Alpha 3, and then these 2 new characters called Julie and Junie, who were also boss characters. They kind of showed up in the penultimate fight in the arcades. So that's 3 new characters right from the start that you can select in the PlayStation version. It then also included the 3 remaining characters from Super Street Fighter 2, the new challengers. So Alpha 3 already included Cammy from the new challengers, and then the PlayStation port added in T-Hawk, DJ and Fei Long. So we know those from previous games. They're in the game now. And then it had a separate game mode called World Tour mode, and playing that you could unlock Guile, Evil Ryu and Shin Akuma. So that's another 3 characters that you could unlock. So you can see this roster starting to balloon and become much bigger. Then later in 1999, they released a Dreamcast port of Street Fighter Alpha 3, which was very similar to the PlayStation version. It had a few extra game modes and things, but it was essentially the PlayStation port, just with better visuals and faster loading times. And then weirdly, after the Dreamcast version, they released a Sega Saturn version, which I think is just completely bizarre. But this only released in Japan, so you'll only find this as Street Fighter 03, as a Japanese-only release, which once again requires the 4MB RAM card like a lot of these Street Fighter games do. And the Sega Saturn version included Guile, Evil Ryu and Shin Akuma unlockable right from the start. So in the Sega Saturn version, which is more or less arcade perfect, you've got this ginormous roster. You've got all the characters from the arcade game, then you've got the new challengers, you've got Guile, you've got Julie, you've got Junie, you've got Balrog, all of the characters basically. Everyone's thrown in. You've got this ginormous roster. So you can see this is quite complicated. The arcade version, which is traditionally the best version of Street Fighter games, has actually got the smallest roster in Alpha 3, which is weird. Like the Sega Saturn version is kind of the definitive version. Well, I say it's the definitive version. This is going to get even more complex now. So after the Saturn version, in 2001, So a lot later than the game released originally in arcades, they re-released it, and it was called Street Fighter 03 Upper. And that included all of the characters from all of the console ports. And it included some balance changes, and it fixed up some exploits and bugs. But that is the new definitive version. As I say, it included all the characters, so you've suddenly got this massive roster in the arcades. And it doesn't end there. Beyond Street Fighter 03 Upper, they released a Game Boy Advance port of the game, which was weirdly for me, that was the first version of Street Fighter Alpha 3 I ever played. I bought a Game Boy Advance to play Street Fighter Alpha 3. And with the GBA version, they added in 3 new characters. So our roster's getting even bigger. They added in Eagle, Maki, and Yun, who were all characters from Capcom vs. SNK 2, which you might have played on the GameCube or the PS2 or the Xbox. Weirdly, the Game Boy Advance version's got even more characters in it. And then finally, we've got a PSP version. So in 2006, they released the game on the PSP, known in Europe and the US as Street Fighter Alpha 3 Max, and known in Japan as Street Fighter 03 Double Upper. So that's the best name, Double Upper. And that had all the characters from the GBA version added as well. So I guess Street Fighter 03 Upper in the arcades, probably the one to play. So the majority of the video footage captured in this video is from the original arcade release, so just plain vanilla Street Fighter Alpha 3. But I'm exhausted after talking about all those characters. It's such a complex kind of string of releases, which you don't normally find with the Street Fighter games. You know, they've normally got console ports and they add in extra modes and things. And occasionally they'll unlock secret characters so you can play them, but the Alpha 3 games, it's just weird to even say that. The Alpha 3 game is just dramatically different on every port. It's bizarre. It's quite complex to talk about. So that's the characters out of the way. I can't believe it's taken that long, but that's the character roster. It's this huge character roster. But that's not the only changes to the game compared to Alpha 2. They added in this crazy system where you could select 3 different playing styles basically, and they called them isms. So you select your character, and then in some of the early games it would let you maybe select 2 different super combos or 3 different super combos. You could select which one your character was going to use. In this game, you select between 3 different fighting styles, and they're quite different. They're dramatically different, actually. So, first of all, A-ism is kind of the default, and to get even more complex, in Japan, A-ism is called Z-ism, but everywhere else in the world we know it is A-ism, and that's very much the standard Street Fighter Alpha gameplay. So you've got your super combo bar at the bottom, which has got 3 different meters of charge on it. You can form your super combos. It's a standard Alpha version. I guess that's why it's called A-ism. You've then got X-ism, which is based on Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo. So you've only got 1 super combo bar there, one bar of charge, and that just gives you access to 1 single super combo, which is super powerful, but you've only got 1 bar. And then there's V-ism, which they also call variable style, and that it actually strips out some things. So you can't do air blocks and you can't do alpha counters, but it's got the custom combo system. If you remember that from Street Fighter Alpha 2, where you could kind of hammer all the buttons and mash out your own combo and invent your own combo essentially. That's V-ism in Alpha 3. So you've got these 3 playing styles, and I guess it was probably to satisfy people who preferred different Street Fighter games, how they played, and to try and please everyone. And it's quite interesting, and it's well balanced, and it sounds complex when you first talk about it, like to remember which one's which. But I've always found just, if you don't know, you just pick A-ism and that's just Street Fighter Alpha. It just plays like Street Fighter Alpha. If you want to play a bit more retro, or you want to try some of the different styles, it's nice that they're there. And I've never found it that complex, to be honest. So Street Fighter Alpha 3 also includes the guard meter underneath your health bar, which has appeared I forget. I think it was in Street Fighter 3. We've looked at it before, but it's the first time it's appeared in an alpha game, and it's basically if you block too much, your guard meter starts going down, and when it gets to the bottom, when it runs out, you're stunned for a bit. So it's just to prevent people from turtling, which is, you know, just blocking so that people can't do any moves on them. So it's just a little addition to the alpha series, but it's been in other games. So yeah, just like a ton of changes, and I've probably sounded like a madman just ranting here, but it's quite complex to talk about. It's not quite as simple as normal. It's not like here's the 4 new characters and here's the gameplay changes. It's all these different ports, and it's crazy. They're all really different. But yeah, I mean, it's a massive game. Alpha 3 is huge. It's the final alpha game. It's the definitive alpha game. It's got all of the characters in it. It's got these isms, and it's just got tons there. It's got so much depth. I think playing it in retrospect now, I really appreciate it compared to Alpha 2. So I think we probably leave it there. I think that's enough to digest on Street Fighter Alpha 3. Interestingly, with the announcement of the 30th anniversary collection that's coming out next year on Xbox, PS4, Switch, and PC. Alpha 3 is one of the few games on the collection that's going to have online play. So I think it's Street Fighter 2 Turbo, Street Fighter Alpha 3, Street Fighter 3 Third Strike. Maybe that's it. There's like 3 or 4 games that they've put online play. They obviously haven't given every game online play because it would just split up the user base and you'd never find a match. So you're going to be able to play Street Fighter Alpha 3 online on any console or system next year, which is kind of exciting. I'm into that. But yeah, I just wanted to thank you again for joining me as always. That's the Alpha series done. We are moving on as of our next video. We're finally done with Alpha, and as usual, I can't remember what the next game is. But yeah, onwards and upwards, and I hope you'll join me for it. Thank you again, and I'll see you next time. Bye, 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 bye.